conscience. And my producer is at odds with me because he said I talk too much. And I agree with him. I have no concept of time when I start to talk and get interested in what I'm saying, and you'll probably find that this half hour passes much quicker than the hour of Dynasty. You know? There's something magical about when we're interested in meaningful things. And you will sit on those hard chairs and you won't even feel your ear ends getting corns on them, you know. We have a place at Tall Timber Ranch in Oregon where we have those, at first we had these seats that had little grids on them, you know, and people sat for 6 hours and they didn't even know it, but I can't imagine what they look like. You know, didn't even notice it. I just went numb before the... Anyway, I want to talk about conscience. And I like to be lighthearted about these things because I don't think any preacher or teacher should be walking around with his nose in the air with a sanctimonious look on his face like the leader of the moral majority. The moral minority, because even most of them are not moral, are they? Only on the surface. So we want to talk about this evening, and look, you can really talk about anything you want, but it seems like I have to get things going a little bit. Does anybody have any questions this evening they'd like to? But you're in the background. You can't ask questions. You're outside the red line. No one. You're in East Germany. You can't talk. You know, I just want to say just briefly, just to get things rolling a little bit, and if I lose the sense of time, please let me know, will you? You know, scream bloody murder or something. But all of the problems in our life is a moral problem. And moral problems, I don't mean the morality people lay on you, you know, and their ideas of what morality is and what goodness is and what, you know, love is and devotion to God is and their idea of conscience is and loyalty. We're not talking about those things, and some of them may be fairly accurate. But we're talking about morality as it arises from as you see it. You know, there's an old saying, what's right for me, you know, is right for me, what's right for you is right for you. I'm not quite sure if that really says what I want to say, but what's right for one moment may not be right for the next moment. For instance, I have my son working very hard to get my approval. So he can manipulate me to buy him a bicycle. When I see him doing that, I won't buy him a bicycle. He works hard, all the surface things are in place for me to reward him, but I won't. Because then I'm only going to be weakened by the obligation, which is the motive behind his working so hard to get me to buy him a bicycle. On the other hand, I have another son who does his duty anyway, and I know he'd like a bicycle, but he never has asked. I've seen him looking in the window. See, gee, Dad, I'd like to have one like that, but never mentioned it again, and probably never crossed his mind except in his own thoughts. But then I see him doing his duty dutifully. I'll buy him a bicycle. And here they're both kids doing the same thing. I have to be perceptive enough to know what is right for one moment is not right for the next. And then he say, oh, Dad, you bought him a bicycle. You don't love him. You don't love me as much as him. Got problems, haven't I? Or you bought Jimmy's daddy down the street. He bought him one. Why don't you buy me one? Jimmy's daddy loves him, see? But you have to use wisdom here. And wisdom is not written in books. Wisdom has a matter of perception, and perception has something to do with intuition and loving what's right and cleaving to it and growing from it. There's a human being is a collection of right motivations and right original thinking. You're a sum total of all that. Just like if you have a shoe factory, you have all these people disciplined to do a certain task, and the other end of the factory comes shoes. Then you have a munitions factory, everybody does something slightly different. On the other end of that comes a shell or a bomb. It's all a matter of discipline. And so if you are responding from one source, one system, you'll come out, you'll do crazy things, and as a result of your life, you'll become a different person, and as a different person, you'll live your life in a mess. You create your own mess while becoming that kind of messy person, failure. Or you become a noble person, a happy person, and as a result of listening to your impulse and not giving in to the anti-conscience pressures, see? Now, are there any questions that you would like to ask regarding this, or something close to it at least? And because otherwise I can talk by myself all evening, you know. Hello, Roy Masters, I can talk to myself all evening, keep myself company, but I want to keep you company. So go ahead.
Okay, my question is about our purpose on
Earth? Oh, you want to know what your purpose here?
I would like to
your
know.
purpose on Earth is to discover what your purpose on Earth is. Seek and you shall find. And the word seek is incorrect, not good translation. To seek, you know, for the purpose, most people are seeking, they're in churches, they're in libraries. But seeking implies a linear movement towards an objective discovery, see? A discovery object. But you see, the movement, it's very deceptive. The idea of searching actually leads you away from discovery. You cannot find it on the outside. When I was a little boy, I had the question when I mean, it's been 3 or 4 years old. I don't know, maybe 5, 6, I can't remember. I remember being conscious for the first time. As a matter of fact, there are moments in your life you can, you have a moment of extreme awareness. Coming out of a school one day, suddenly I realized I was on this earth, just walking down the steps of the school. And I can remember that moment as clear as the day, but just because it was an important moment. Not that the school steps were important, and what I was seeing the kids on the playground, it was that here I am, how did I get here? But before that, I lived a life in sort of, everything was semi-dream. Have you noticed? No? Moments of sudden awakening, and it's a little scary because you're sort of sitting in there alone. But in one of those moments, I asked the question, what am I here for? But not with words. Something deeper than words asked the question, and something deeper than words answered it. And it gave me assurances, I will know. And I was satisfied. I asked the question, well, who can I ask? In one of those moments, I thought of my parents and teachers. And my mind reached out a little further than that in thought, in imagination, to see where the answers to life, the riddle of existence, was about. And the same something inside me says, no one has it. I was perfectly satisfied. Did I ever tell you the story of the guy that walked around the parade ground? You didn't hear it? Oh, you must be all new listeners. Good, I get another laugh. It's like this. It's this fellow walking around the parade ground picking up pieces of paper because he's in the army. And he's picking up pieces of paper and saying, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. It goes on for days and weeks. Finally, the sergeant sends him to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist nods his head and writes a piece of paper, his walking papers. Of course, he said, that's it. See, in other words, we know, deep down inside, we know what isn't it, don't we? We may not know what it is. It is it. It's what it isn't. Oh, see, what it is telling us what it isn't. You go to this church, you go to that synagogue, you go to this group of people, always there's something that says, that's not it. That's nothing satisfied. Nothing is compatible with what you're looking. If you're really searching, you're going to go many places, and you're going to stick your nose in many things. And maybe you think, oh, this looks like it might be it, and you join. And then all of a sudden it gets dry, and you say, that's not it. May happen a lot of times, but I can save you a lot of trouble. It's not anywhere. Because what is it is telling you that's not it. That's it. Who understands what I'm saying? Short circuit, nobody needs to search anymore. Now the correct translation for seek. Yearn and ye shall find. Translators are traitors. Read the Bible, open up the parallel version of the New Testament, each translation, New Testament, modern versions, and King James, all side by side, and everyone will say something different about the same statement. Actually different. You can have a totally different doctrine based upon the different translations. Maybe one of them has it, maybe none of them have it. You just got a bunch of words, and the translators, mostly translators are not spiritual people. They're intellectuals. And you can't expect intellectuals to understand, to have it, and to tell you where to find it. So they will translate seek, which yearn, which is to seek. Naturally, but if you really understood that, you know that seeking, you can't find it. See? Well, he found something. Okay, now, you understand what I'm saying? Got any more questions? Yes. You could stand, please.
Okay. I have been searching here lately, and I can see that you're definitely a man of God. I can see the Spirit on you, so I recognize that.
I hope in me.
Yes, in you.
Get off. This reminds me of the psychiatrist. Yes. The guy comes to the psychiatrist, he says, I got problems. He says, I got all these flies on me. He said, don't brush them on me. You know, I don't want the kingdom of heaven on me. I want it in me. Go ahead.
Okay, you were speaking of intellectuals a little while ago, and I work with intellectuals, and I can see that that's my biggest pride. My problem is my pride. Okay, and it's
pride.
I'm just trying to discover how I move out of the job that I'm in. Into
what kind of work do you do?
I work with computers. Okay.
Well, you don't have to be caught up in the intellect. I mean, it is definitely an intellectual preoccupation, and it could be a hypnotic fix, and it could draw you in. There's something about intellectual work, you know, which takes lofty concentration and high knowledge. It could suck you in and turn you into a total psychotic, where you can't function in real life, and you walk around like a shriveled up little wimp with spectacles on, but you're good at electronics, but you're a failure at life. Exactly. See? Well, you don't look like you've taken that form yet, so you're still in good shape.
I got out of it. I got out of it.
It may be a good idea to get out of that sort of thing, because your brains, your soul needs a rest. You need a convalescent period, because you need a time for, it's very demanding. It's a very powerful vortex that you got drawn in when you're involved in total concentration.
Yes,
you have to learn that the same things come naturally. See, there's two ways of learning something. There's the total accumulation of knowledge for pridefulness' sake. You understand that? And then when you take, I remember when I was a kid, I could just reflect for a moment. I did something well. I don't remember what it was. And then I took a deep breath. I was very proud of what I did, and my brain hurt. I also laughed too hard and my brain hurt, because that was an artificial laugh. Ever had that happen to you? There are things that you do which are sort of prideful, and you tend to take too much energy from it and get somehow involved in your cleverness, in the glory of it. And it's like a life and energy that comes from that lights all your bulbs up, like a rush. But for me, it was a total flag, a warning flag. What's going on here? It made me suddenly conscious. When I was in school, I was a clever kid. When I was about 9 years old, they had some kind of contest of how to work some kind of leverage principle with pulleys. So I'd figured out something which came out correct. So the teacher gave me a prize, and they put me in front of the school, and they gave me this prize, and suddenly there's one of those moments. There's moments of extreme awareness, like the flag went up, and you know, most kids would get caught up in that rush and beam like a Cheshire cat, and feel like they're glowing, and then be encouraged to do things intellectually and caught up in the cleverness of it, and think oneself very clever. It's called pridefulness, right? But that's, you're separated from the intuitive way of doing the same thing. Now you're addicted to learning, and you see there's a guilt involved. Now you're addicted to learning as a means of staying ahead of guilt, staying ahead of inferiority, because that's an inferior way of becoming somebody. It's an inferior way of evolving. And you're always evolving a conflict. But then you think, Well, the reason I feel conflict is because I'm not clever enough. Maybe if I learn more and get more degrees and see, and then you move towards it, and it's a strange kind of hope. When you're moving towards something, you're moving away from guilt. The Japanese have a very interesting practice on this subject. I once went to a restaurant. I may have told this joke before, but you got a new audience, I get a new laugh. And they had these 20 dishes. Every time the dishes came with little tiny bits of food in it. And it fell in my hollow tooth. I don't think it ever got to my stomach. And I said, why do you put all these dishes? Why can't you put it on one dish and finish with it? But they made a big ritual because looking forward to something is better than having it. When you have it, you're not happy anymore. So that when you acquire knowledge, when you acquire riches, when you acquire fame, it breeds an ennui, a lethargy, a pain. The conscience catches up with you. And it's trying to say something to you and you can't hear it because you're so intellectual, you can only hear words, you can't hear the wordless intuition. You have to learn, you have to develop your soul in such a fashion as to listen to intuition. And it gets louder and louder and it speaks to you without words. But the more you're caught up in words, and words become your language, your substitute language, substitute meaning, where you think you can find meaning in something in the word and beyond the word, you are actually creating a kind of identity that breeds, which is in full of conflict. And so therefore, to cut a long story short, having learned yourself away from reality, you have to give your brain a rest and let reality catch up with you. See? And then when your reality catches up with you, you start to understand it a different way. For instance, you can learn the scriptures. And you know how the preachers teach scriptures. You study, you learn, and you play it back like a parrot. You don't understand it. The more you learn it, the less you understand it. The more you need interpretation from the preacher. Then you've got the preacher spirit operating in you hypnotically instead of your own. The spirit that gives you to understand becomes your spirit. It becomes your life. It becomes your fulfillment. It becomes who you are. See? It becomes your happiness here on earth, and it becomes your accomplishment in which you take no pride. Therefore, there is no conflict. You see what I'm saying? So, and you acknowledge the source. But this is the process you must come back to. Give your brain a rest. In other words, you're not guilty because you're not accomplishing something more. You're not guilty because you are not learning more like you think you ought to make yourself better. So you can have that little carrot in front of you leading you towards some hopeless hope.
Yeah,
right?
As a matter of fact, I'm doing less now at work. And I'm beginning to see that maybe there's another reason why I'm there. I'm not into that prideful game anymore.
But you're doing better.
Yes, I'm doing much better.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
You'll do less. Things are getting less complicated for you, aren't they?
Yes.
Things are becoming easy to see.
Exactly.
Where you once struggled with an idea and you had a think tank and you got guys together and you I guess that's what they do in scientific circles today. And you think and you struggle and you weigh one thing and you'll be able to see things in a lightning flash, just like that, light bulb going on. You can discover things. Old Einstein, he discovered the E equals mc squared. I think he discovered it in a dream. And then he knew what it meant too. But then nobody else understood it. It took the scientific community umpteen years for even to understand him, let alone accept it. When they finally understood him and finally accepted him, they all were wind-up toys, like people who learn the gospel. You see, they still didn't understand the way he understood it. He originated understanding. See, we must also originate. We must wait for our children to originate understanding, otherwise we kill them. Because once you start to originate understanding as if that was understanding, and they think they understand because they're caught up in the swirl of thinking, the temptation to believe you rather than themselves, they evolve a different type of personality that's dependent upon a source of knowledge outside themselves, you see. So that the sense of who they are comes from learning more. But learning more is a spiritual source. You see, what I'm trying to say is it's not very easy, but the source of knowing things, understanding, and is a spirit. And this spirit has reasons for us what he wants us to know. He wants you to know something a little different from me. You see, you're an engineer, and I'm a minister, and someone else is a doctor. So everybody has different understandings. So the magic of it is that we all form part of a great overall plan, the kingdom of heaven on earth. See? Even the good Lord knows when little Dicky Bird falls to the ground, see? He's got it all. He knows every part of the universe, from its macrocosm to its microcosm. The smallest little germs and the smallest little atoms are all functioning according to a grand design and kept carefully in place, and he has a reason for everything. This is incredible. To some degree, we can do that with computers today. Big Daddy, you know, that sort of thing, Big Brother. It's possible to a smaller degree, because we can see that. But you see the point that I'm making? The source of your discovery, the source of your information, has to be information. It has to be inward, from your conscience. Otherwise, you're not fulfilling the purpose on earth as it is in heaven. And you're not growing, you're not evolving, because human beings are not made like with knowledge. They fall apart from knowledge, because knowledge, which is the temptation to be prideful, separates us from this process of humility and evolving a light being. You see what I'm saying? Like a little flower gets its form and its direction from the sunlight. It draws in and it grows up towards the light. And as it draws the light through its photosynthesis, it evolves a bigger body and more complex mechanisms to draw even more light to manifest the plan within the seed, the original plan, see? And it's the same with us. We have an original seed, original something, which is only compatible with this inner light, see? And it is awakened by this light at certain levels. And we grow according to those moments, and we grow to the next moment, and then we see more. And we grow to the next moment, and we're able to see more. And this evolves into us the kind of person and character we were meant to be. But if this process is usurped by education, by religion, it's like pulling the rose petals off and try to make it unfold before its time. You're just pulling the petals off. You're destroying the plant. You see, so that knowledge from another source is really, let me put it this way, knowledge from an outside source, the appeal to pride and the separating us from this inner process is what original sin was all about. The knowledge of good. Here it is, the apple, peyote, mind-expanding drug. You can be God, full of knowledge. You know what we're full of, don't you? It ain't knowledge. Knowledge can't make a human being grow according to the divine plan, but it causes chaos to enter, and the spirit of chaos, confusion. You've seen it, haven't you? And it breaks down the human psyche, and pretty soon we die from all kinds of diseases, and all the knowledge people try to spray you and stick you in your ear and, you know, inject you, and God knows what they do to you. Yes.
When you talk about that we don't really hear from words, like I have a feeling that some words come from the intellect, from being...
My words come to my intellect talking to you, but they gather together from a bonding spirit. They're collated. My words spring to attention in response to the realization of the answer to your question or the moment of need. See?
Is that the same thing like with God? Like you say, he talks to everybody different. We all have different understanding. And it's an
We all have the
individual thing.
same understanding
So
of basic...
sometimes could it be with words at times, like in the
No,
Bible?
God doesn't talk to you with words.
Well, when he explained for like certain prophets to do certain things, I know he
No,
was
doesn't.
showing them.
No, God didn't talk to those prophets with words, but he had to talk to the people about the kind of things he was understanding. Otherwise, he couldn't talk. Understanding has a language of its own. This evening, I've used a lot of words, but those words are not understanding. Those are just words. These words have understanding. They are a missile, or they are conveyances. They are I'm looking for the words for it, but they are vehicles through which passes a message which, well, people who are word-oriented can't hear, who are not looking for understanding. see? And there's a spirit, in words, there's either a spirit of understanding desiring to awaken you to your own spirit. It's the message of salvation. Listen to your conscience. Always let your conscience be your guide. Jiminy Cricket, see, sort of fashion. But there's another force operating through words that's trying to make you little children and, you know, and to hover over you like a giant parent and to make all of you cripples and dependent on the state or the church. See what I'm saying? They wants to be your God, in other words, and they want to be your filling. Well, I have to make a break now. See, remember I said that half an hour went past just like that? So, ladies and gentlemen, those of you listening in Los Angeles, watching in Los Angeles, can hear me on KIEV, 870 on the dial, 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 to 10. And if you would like to see this program continue, suggest that you support the program with your gifts and your donations. And in a few moments, the announcer is going to flash on the screen this book, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well, to teach you how to meditate so you can listen to your conscience and deal with stress. Thank you very much for watching, and join us in our next program tomorrow evening.
And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Negative Emotions. Actually, it's going to be how to control all of your emotions. Not suppress them, but hear me out. In our last discussion, we have an audience here, and we tape 5 programs, half hour. So it's, to the audience, it's last night, but to this audience, it's still tonight. So if you see the same faces, you haven't got it rigged. There are other people out there who want to know things as well. So last night we were talking about conscience and the kind of human being that comes from listening to it and the kind of human being that comes from not listening to it. You've seen what happens when we're not taught values in school. You see what kind of things happen in our society. The new headlines are full of that kind of thing, those happenings today. Your own life is a perfect example or imperfect example of what happens when you don't listen to your conscience, when you doubt what you know is right in your heart. You don't listen to that voiceless voice, and you listen to the big loud voice that outshouts your conscience, and pretty soon you start listening to it, and then you're in a heap of trouble, and your life is a heap of rubble. And I just want to say before I take my first call, and I want to say it emphatically, I mean, first, I do have a radio program. It lets me off the hook. The devil made me do that. It was a promotion. I want to say that all of the problems you have, the psychological problems, the emotional problems, the school problems, the drug problems, the alcohol, the family problems, your diseases, your dilemmas, your financial problems, all caused from one thing. Never mind what the homosexuals say. Those gay blades out there. They're bringing a holocaust, a medical holocaust down on our heads if you listen to those people and all the intellectuals today who are nothing else but a big Tower of Babel. But listen to me and listen well. That all of your problems come from not listening to your conscience, from not knowing the difference between intuition and instinct. You get them mixed up. And instinct rushes and becomes more powerful the more you give in to the temptations of life, which says, don't listen to your conscience, doubt yourself, believe in me, follow me. I have the way. Make something of yourself. You'll be a garbage collector if you don't, sort of thing. The school does that, holding up that stick and carrot. And then the churchmen say, well, I've got the way. Jesus says this, and I know what Jesus means. You listen to me. You don't know what he's talking about. Only you can understand for yourself. And you really shouldn't listen to anybody. You should listen, but you shouldn't follow. When you listen to people, you should listen to them and see if it makes sense. And you got a little, whenever you start to feel a little pull in your solar plexus, now we're getting to something, whenever you start to feel a little pull here that makes you want to give in to what people want you to do. Let's say somebody wants you to babysit, and you don't really want to do it, but they're your friend and you don't want to hurt their feelings. You know how that is? Oh, come on, you know, you're my friend. And you want to do something yourself, but you don't want to hurt their feelings. You know how that is? You feel this pressure right here? That's when you don't listen. You don't go with that. I'm just giving you a clue. Do not go when you feel pressure right here. Don't do anything. Let's say well, listen, you're going to lose that car. It's a great deal. There's only one like it. When you feel the pressure to say yes, when you feel this pressure, when you feel like you want to buy it, don't. Well, you're going to lose it, so lose it. Don't grab hold of something. Don't let something grab hold of you and pull you. When it's all over, and all the feelings have gone away here, when that feeling in your solar plexus is completely gone, and the opportunities have passed, so-called opportunities. You'll make $1 million, it's just too late, and it's your last chance. Pressure. When you feel the solar plexus, you might lose your friend if you don't babysit for them, sort of thing. Lose your friend. Don't go along with that. When it's all finished, then you can say, just a minute, I changed my mind. I think I'll babysit, or not. You'll have listened to your conscience. If I'm telling you now, your conscience doesn't produce feelings in the solar plexus. That is hypnotic. That's how a person who's hypnotized feels, exactly. If you were hypnotized, and I've put a suggestion in your mind that I've obligated you to do it, you'd feel just like that. You feel like you'd let me down, or you feel bad. You feel very strongly obligated to please me, or something bad will happen to you. Who understands what I've just said? Good for you. No one ever told you that before. See? In other words, listening to your conscience is not, is really not listening to everyone else. And in other words, the first thing, there are two forces, one inside and one outside. And the one inside doesn't make it itself known with words. If you don't know what to do, don't do anything. So you lose your girlfriend, or you lose your friendship, or you lose the chance to make that bundle of money that seems to be that great opportunity, which isn't, putting the pressure on you. Never mind. Whenever you feel the pressure, it's a conflict between what you have going for you, what could be something beautiful and meaningful. On the other side of that, not giving into that pressure, is a new life for you. Following me? Now we'll take our questions. Maybe I've ruined the questioning period, because it's an interesting line of thought all by itself, isn't it? Can you stand up, please?
My question.
See, before I even...
About, yeah, about the word list. And also, so I was wondering, though, sometimes if you have, like, sometimes something tells me without words, and I don't kind of listen to it, and then the words come after that. Like just a couple of words, 2 or 3. It doesn't sound like it's me or my intellect.
I'm losing you there.
Yeah, okay, I know I should stay away from that, because I know words are everybody's problem, especially nowadays. You know,
you see now,
so many
words, you will find an understanding of philosophy, as I do, doesn't come from books, but it comes from listening to the system that I told you about. I know that when that feeling of, I feel that pull in my solar plexus, I'm not to go with it. I know, that's a no-no. That's some other system of things that is operating. It's a conflict between who I am and who I'm going to be if I listen, seeing what I shall become. And I've discovered that a few short steps in that direction will soon teach you there's something called conflict and guilt and failing and emptiness. Is that right?
Where does that come from, the feeling from the solar plexus? And where
no,
does it
well, solar plexus is the seat of one's emotions. One doesn't feel in the brain. The brain has no feelings. You feel commands and pressures from the outside. You'll feel it there, accumulating there. But it's the brain that is influenced by these feelings right here.
Like
and since you tend to go by your feelings, people tend to be pulled by their feelings. They'll be pulled by what the instructions that seem to come from here. It seems to come from there. It's really going on up there, you see. So, yes.
You know, I know that feeling you're talking about it, and sometimes I think I don't know how. I think I struggle with that sometimes.
No?
I
You want to know how to deal with it?
how?
Well, this is how you deal with it. You simply acknowledge. For instance, what have I said that this feeling is telling you?
Not
The-
to do what they're pressuring you to do.
Well, the feeling says to do it.
Mhm.
But your understanding of things which has no feeling about it. Remember, this has a feeling. The world you must listen to is not a feeling. You must listen to the world of not a feeling. Let's say you want to be a championship Olympic diver. You stand on the diving board for the first time. You've got a feeling not to jump, haven't you? It's a long way down. You listen to that feeling, you go down those steps, you'll never be a diver. You overcome a feeling to be brave, right? You don't give in to a feeling to be brave. Is that correct? Your feelings tell you things. And it alerts you. The feelings, your senses bring you information. And anything that is contrary, any intelligence that is operating through those senses and trying to move you off your center and to make you move according to its will rather than the divine will, right? This will, if you're a searching person, if you have this compatibility with God, good. If you're, you know, we were starting yesterday to talk about what life is all about, and I said, you know, this sincere person seeks to know what life is all about. That's his whole purpose. What do you want, Daddy? What am I here for? It's what you really hold. It's your attitude that makes you compatible. And it's not a word. You don't even know you have this attitude. You just know you can't go along with the crowd. You know you have gone along with the crowd on those pressures, but it troubles you, or that doesn't trouble them. To them, it's a natural way. To you, it's the unnatural way. You're a searcher. You are destined for better things. Therefore, because you are stamped somewhere in your soul, maybe in the middle of your forehead, who knows? Because you're stamped and you're marked for different destiny, you cannot be pulled along by those same pressures those other people are controlled by. Do you follow that? That's how you know you're different. Because you have a conscience and you have conflict when you are moved by that wrong spirit. Yes.
I have a question that's been bothering me, and
Is it along these lines, or would you suddenly change things?
it suddenly changed, but it's about spirits, and the spirits, like evil spirits that are in people.
Oh, we don't want to talk about that this evening.
Okay.
If it's just too much of a vast change of subject. We had a discussion, something like that, some weeks ago. So you're just a little bit out of kilter there. Yes.
Back to the
Yeah.
subject. You said that if you listen to words too much intellectually, and you can tell when there's a voice telling you what is right and what's wrong. Well, I feel
No,
like.
I didn't say that.
What'd you say?
I don't know what you're saying.
I must have gotten the
You
wrong.
sound a little bit confused about.
I probably am.
The
But you said,
second time I have to make you sit down because you're not
No.
saying a whole lot.
No, but you said seek and you shall find, and then you
Right.
said yearn and you shall find.
Yeah.
But what if you're not seeking or you don't feel any yearning?
Too bad for you.
I mean, you.
There's no understanding. You wouldn't be able to understand the question. The very fact that you asked the question could not possibly produce an answer. Because no matter what I would say, if you weren't yearning, if you weren't seeking, for instance, if you said, how do you fix this motor? So I'll give you the answer. But if you're not interested in the motors, it wouldn't mean anything to you. It's only if you're fixing this motor and the Skyberius on the forklift turns the spaghetti over the right screw, see? And you're right here with the Skyberius, the bongo here. Well, now comes the question. How does this, now what do I do? I'm stuck. Now you ask a person, I've got this far, what do I do? A person who is a mechanic will know exactly where you are, right? That mechanic, there's no, see? When you ask a question, I know where you are. And you can't fool me. And I can even if you should invent the question. Let's say you heard somebody else ask the question. Now you stand up to be prideful and ask the question. I can tell. I can even tell. There's intuition. I can tell the good guys from the bad guys. There's timing and there's the tone of the voice. Everything. There's so many different factors that I know because I've learned to be very sensitive to my conscience. You've got to get up very early in the morning. But it's not because I'm clever, because I'm close to the original light. And the closer I get to it, the more aware I am, the more aware of details. For instance, you're not a mechanic when you open up the bonnet. Is it the hood? I'm still English, you know what I mean. You open up the hood, and nothing means anything to you anymore. If something wrong, you wouldn't know. But if you were a very good mechanic and you opened up the hood, there's something wrong, you know how everything works. The more you know about that engine, the more quickly you can see something out of place. Right? Oh, the spark plug's not on there properly. Distributor, whatever. But you see, they can go right to it. But you can't. So, the closer you get to reality, and the more you listen to your conscience, the more conscience there is to listen to. So therefore, you are much more astute. Anybody who has a profession, whether it's photography, anything, surgery, you notice more things when you've done it and become well versed in it, don't you? You notice things that nobody else sees. See? Now.
Yeah, using the meditation, and I know I have a habit of smoking, and so after the meditation, and I be objective, and you know I see that you know I get a pull
To smoke.
to not to smoke though, because you know I know that's not
The right thing
for me, you know, but what happens that is I escape off into eating, and then the eating brings the smoking back. You know? It's like
I understand that. Let me explain it to them.
But then again, I see that I see look at this pulling on me. So but then again, it seems like if I don't fall into this eating, that I don't understand this other world.
Well, I understand. Let me explain to you.
It seems like
I can explain. I know. You give me enough to go by. Of course, this is really a subject all by itself. And I've been discussing this for weeks on end. But it's man-woman relationship, and I guess it's worth touching on just very lightly this evening. When you don't listen to your conscience, and one of the main things that stops you from listening to your conscience, that prevents you, one of the main tricks of society and the wicked people in it, is to upset you, to frustrate you. Society is laced with all kinds of petty rules and regulations that keep you stifled, and even the best brains can hardly rise above to be who they were meant to be. You know what I mean? And the whole object is to keep you little children with a big daddy, a big brother, and to paralyze you and to reduce you into just slaves of the state. I'm sorry to say it, that's the way it's always been, see? And my purpose is to raise you to a higher level where the kingdom of heaven could be on this earth. And the kingdom of heaven can only come on this earth when men realize that they do not owe anything to authority. They're the rabbis and the politicians and the preachers who have conditioned you to look up to them and feel heartbeat in their presence. You know what I mean? And afraid to speak up, and to intimidate you. They've always done that. You see the preachers on television, they're treating those people like little kids, yelling and screaming at them like they were. See, remember? You've seen it before. But the purpose that I have is to teach you to listen to your conscience. But you cannot listen to your conscience if you respond to temptation. A temptation can be food. The original temptation was listen to it. The original temptation, and it's still original with us. It is still conditioned reflex response. If you examine the story of how paradise was lost, it's allegory, it's fantasy, it's fiction. No, I don't think so. because you can still see the conditioning factor and the failing factor involved. That food, forbidden food, let's say it was peyote, a mind-expanding experience where you could become knowledgeable, you could know who you are, God, you can be a God. It separated you from God and gave you, instead of conscience, instead of a consciousness, an inner knowing and never knowing why you know, but always being informed when God wanted you to fulfill his purpose on earth. He'll give you as much as you need to know when you needed it, see? And not any more. To be ambitious for more knowledge is for your own purpose on earth. So therefore, the fruit, see, embodied, it represented the separation from God to be man's own God. See? Now, the minute man fell from this, see, everybody has a problem with food and ambition and trying to be something through knowledge. But the food is, even to this day, as it's offered through women, you watch the cooking shows, the women are always, there's an old saying, the way to a man's heart is through his tummy. See? It is true. Exactly. The way is to his soul.
But the men that are on those shows, though, most of those TV shows are men cooks.
Well, just a minute. You're taking me too fast. Take too fast. You're right in the observation, but it's too far ahead for an answer. What I'm trying to say to this young man is that food, Jesus said, I have food to eat you know nothing about. I have food to eat you know nothing about. 12 o'clock at night in the refrigerator. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to liven this up a little bit. You see, if the drug addict, whatever drug, whether it's peyote or whatever it is, when he's corrupted by that particular drug, an alteration in his psyche occurs where he begins to become a different person. He's separated from the ground of his own being. He could no longer listen to the spirit of who he was and who he could be. And now he must listen, he must be fulfilled by and serviced by the fulfillment, by the spirit of what he's going to be. And what he's going to be is full of conflict. You follow that? Did I say that well enough? Now, so therefore, food has a quality to it, even though we do need to eat. We do need to eat. Somehow, if I was a hypnotist, see, I used to be a hypnotist, but one of the strongest suggestions I could make to you would be incorporate through food. I could say every time you put your shoes on, you would stand on your head. I'm just making something up. Okay, now the shoes would be the trigger. You'd stand on your head. You don't know why. You go to the door, you go to the wall, and you go stand on your head. And somebody say, "Well, why are you doing that?" So, it's healthy for you. It's yoga. I'm practicing. You make excuses for these silly things that you do. But one morning, let's say you didn't put your shoes on, and then the spell's broken. Who follows that? Okay, now, but food you have to eat 3 times a day. So if I could take something natural and incorporate a suggestion in it, you'd never be free from it. Okay? Knowledge of good and evil, the woman offering the food of pride. Now men are addicted for the reassurance of the suggestion that it can be something that they can't really be. They need reassurance, and they get it from food. And every time a person eats, people are very proud of eating. They're very into eating. You know, their cultures. Every time a person eats now, it reinforces, well, every time you eat spaghetti, you're an Italian. Italiano, right? Every time you eat matzo ball soup, you're Jewish. See? And every time you eat, drink vodka, all of a sudden the Russian is alive in you, see? And all of these suggestions of who you are, and I'm telling you, but the trouble is, you don't realize that incorporated in all your food is the reassurances of pride that keeps you earthbound, so that you can't break free from it because you have to eat, and eating, it is so subtle you can't see it, see? And it creates the aberrant behavior. No matter, Every time you eat, wherever you eat, as long as you live, you'll always be programmed by the original spirit to become more and more the earthy, disgusting, spoiled, irresponsible, too responsible, compensating person you are. See? So it reinforces your behavior patterns. Whether you're a conformist or whether you're a rebel, it will reinforces all those patterns becoming worse and worse and worse, and it creates its own emptiness for food. Now, so therefore, we all have problems with foods. Now, how do we deal with problems with food? We try to escape from food. We start to smoke. Now, if we smoke, but all we're doing is taking a different fruit. And again, we're not any better off for smoking. We're not eating as much, because but we're falling to another temptation. Smoking is a poison. What is it doing? It's poisoning conscience. Because the forbidden fruit, whether it's smoking or drinking or back to smoking again and back to eating again, when you give up one, the other one appears. You see what I mean? But whatever it is, the forbidden fruit, which makes one prideful, it makes you forget what's right to do what's wrong. But then you need it to forget that you've become wrong and to continue in the wrong way as if it was the right way of life. Nobody likes to admit they're wrong. So you eat the forbidden fruit and you become a wrong person. You lose sight of your conscience. See? You set aside your conscience to become who you are. But then you become guilty. And how do you deal with guilt? You put aside your conscience again. And as long as you put aside your conscience through smoking, through eating, through drinking, you continue to become a worse person. See? And so you, well, I haven't got time to continue the idea. We've got 1 minute, so we're right up to the wire here. We're going to continue this discussion tomorrow night. And in a few moments, they're going to flash on the screen where you can get my book, Your Mind Can Keep You Well. There's also one, How to Control Your Emotions. And I suggest you learn to return to your conscience and listen to your conscience, and always let it be your guide. And don't let anybody tell you what is right and wrong, but you'll discover it for yourself. And once you understand that principle, you're on the right track. And it'll teach you more about that. And please write to the foundation. Support the program, otherwise we can't stay on the air. We cannot. So begin by writing for the book and the cassettes to teach you how to listen to your conscience and not the pressures around you. Thank you very much, and join us again tomorrow evening.
And now, from the Foundation of Human Understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Negative Emotions. And we've been speaking about conscience, and we've spent 2 sessions on that subject, and I think we can go on for quite some time. And that if you lived according to what you know is right in your heart, most of you forgot what all that's about. Listen to the voiceless voice. You'd never have a conscience. Because I don't have a conscience, because I'm not in conflict with one. I'm in concert with my conscience, therefore my mind does not incriminate me. I live a free life. I'm carefree. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst. Blessed are this. Remember the Beatitudes, all of the blessings. And the word blessed comes from the Old English blithe, or blithe, like blithe spirit, carefree. Carefree are those who hunger. Carefree are those who are searching for the truth, who mourn when they know they're wrong and admit they're wrong, for they shall be comforted. See? By the Spirit within them, restored. So there's no more conscience anymore. How do you get rid of your conscience? You drink, you smoke, you booze, you lose yourself in a novel. See, you take away the conflict and the anxiety, and you lose sight of shame. And every time you do that, it's like biting into the forbidden fruit. Because the forbidden fruits of life are used to forget your conscience. See, you can't be an ego. You can't have an ego, a pridefulness, and have a conscience bothering you and breaking you down at the same time. You can't function See, the ego is a man playing God. And he has to be free from the rules of the universe, the universal rules, the moral rules for man, the purpose that God shaped man and put in him his will and purpose originally. See? And that's what loving God is. You love God or you love your own self. You love to be God. But in order to be God, you have to not know what he wants. You have to reject, rebel against your conscience. You must not want to know what right and wrong is. You must forget that, because the ego can't grow in that light of knowing. Otherwise, it knows itself as a nothing, shriveled up, coward failure, disgusting, animal, degenerate being that it is, inheriting death as part of life. Cannot do it. So in order to be who we are and we bite into the various poisons. See? The poisoned apple, which is loaded with suggestion and excitement to disobey. And then we forget what reality. To become who we are, we start to evolve this self. But this self is in conflict because you can't put the light out. There comes the light back, the understanding, the wordless understanding. We feel a grinding in our spirit, a friction in the spirit. And what do? We reach for more forgetfulness, to forget the truth and to remember that we are the truth. See? To anesthetize our conscience. And every time we do that, we have less understanding and we feel free. We're a coffee achiever. You know those coffee achievers? The now generation and the coffee achievers. And so you drink your cocaine and you drink your nicotine and you inhale it and you anesthetize your conscience. And then when you anesthetize, you feel free. You feel free and guiltless. And you have the inertia. You have the inertia, not inertia, but the inertia, the motion towards the things you want when you're drinking, imbibing the spirit of the fruit of pride, the stimulation, the temptation to exist. You see what I mean? Yes, ma'am.
If food can dull your mind and your conscience, so to speak,
It can.
what about sweets and bad food? Now that is what does it, right? But you have to eat, so
No,
isn't
any
there
food will do it. Even a
moderation?
whole wheat sandwich can do it.
Because you're
All food. Do you remember the original? We're getting away from conscience, but it's okay. See, I am very esoterically organized in my thinking, and I see everything in these shades, no shades of gray, but black and white. Man originating through temptation.
So you're
And,
saying,
and food was the original conditioning factor, you see, to which men are addicted to go on being prideful and to anesthetize their conscience. You see, but you see, Christ was brilliant. Do you know how brilliant he was? Do you know that he only left one ritual? Do you remember I said about food the other day that every time you eat food, you can't separate the food from the hypnotic suggestion that's buried into it? See?
right.
You can't. Every time you eat something, your conscience disappears. You feel comfort. Instead of feel conflict, you feel comfort. And this comforted person goes on to live longer and become wronger.
How
You
does
see?
one know when to stop eating then?
Well, listen to what I'm saying. If you let me finish the point,
Oh, sure.
the answer will come. Yeah, but answer the question if it's not complete in a minute.
Okay.
Now, Christ knew that the separation from God to be one's own God had something to do with food, forbidden fruit. Of all the trees of the fruit, a garden you can eat, except the knowledge of the good, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you may not. For they shall eat, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall become as gods, knowing good from evil, right? Something like that. And the inner eye is closed, the outer eye is open, and we become sensual, and who we are comes from more and more knowledge, more and more food, more to support the rebellion, to put the conscience to sleep, to awaken out the sense of who we are, to fulfill who we are, to give motivation, to reinforce the suggestions that we can really be. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, but Christ was a very conscious being. He knew that every time people ate, they reinforced, no matter how humble the food, they could not help but put their conscience to sleep, and they were forever separated from the ground of their being. That's why wise men, they fasted. They didn't fast because it was good for their body. They fasted so they could understand themselves better.
And they fasted so no one else would know. They didn't go around saying, I'm fasting,
Well,
I'm
you get
fasting.
pridefulness. You get pride when
They would just
you
be
get
quiet
support.
and do it.
But I'm making the point.
Okay,
He only left one ritual.
okay.
Christ only left one ritual. The church is loaded with rituals, all hypnotic, none of his making. Christ was as free as a bird, and nothing is instituted in the church was from him. One ritual, do this, breaking bread, drinking the fruit wine, do this remembering me. You know what? He represented redemption, the message that God is going to reconcile man to himself, right? He really did. Therefore, he carried with him a certain power that if you believed in who he was, then you're going to do what he says, and you're going to believe in what he says. Now, remember, original sin had something to do with doubting God, forgetting your conscience, forgetting the purpose for which you to do your own thing, to become your own God. So it had something to do with forgetting God and remembering yourself as one, right? It's suggestions inherent in food. He said, he knew that every time somebody ate, you try going home and see if you can remember it till you get home, and open the refrigerator, write it on your hand if you like. Write it on a piece of paper, stick it in the middle of your forehead, right in front of your nose, and go in the refrigerator and start to eat something. And even though what I'm about to say is written on the you'll forget even to read it. You disappear when you eat. Did you know that's the reason why people have to eat so much? It's because only while they're chewing the food, their brain is hypnotized and comforted. You forget the guilt. And when you swallowed it, then the conscience comes back again, and the fat, of course,
And so,
has a factor in reminding you that you've done something wrong and foolish, and it doesn't look good on your pride. But then you have to eat again. Why? Because it anesthetizes your conscience and comforts you again.
may I ask something, please?
And it fills you with the wrong spirit. I haven't finished the point yet. I know. Forgive me. Do you see what Christ did, though? Understanding this, he said, eat this remembering me. That is a very counter-hypnotic. It is,
Thank you.
see what it's counter-hypnotic. It breaks the spell of the suggestion. If you can eat food and eat it quietly, eat simple food, not stimulating food, not specially spiced food, which is all designed to enhance the hypnotic value of things.
Thank you.
Follow that?
Yes.
It's got to be simple food, and if you eat it being conscious of what you eat, the purpose of eating food is to be unconscious, to take you away from conscious. That's the only way it's going to give you comfort. If it can poison your conscience, see, anesthetize your conscience. And that's why it has to be more elaborate, more stimulated, and that's why we're getting bigger and fatter and uglier, because we're eating not for our bodies, but to anesthetize the soul. And the more you do that, the more you anesthetize the soul, the more you're rejecting the truth. You're using the food salvation rather than the salvation. And every time you use the food salvation, you're rejecting. It's almost like you're reenacting the same scene in the garden. I don't want to admit I'm wrong. See? I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'll feel okay.
The evil can get into you that way, though. The more you anesthetize your conscience, the more the evil slips in.
The
and
evil
controls
suggestions,
you.
your whole life is controlled by suggestions that slip into your unaware state. And you don't understand. It's the spirit of your mother. Your mother made a big thing with food, didn't she?
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't eat her food, she'd get all upset because she couldn't put her will into you. But it wasn't her will.
Yes.
It was her mother's will. But it wasn't her mother's will. It was her mother's will.
Eve's will.
And whose will was it?
Eve's.
All the way back to the garden, it wasn't even Eve's will on earth as it is in hell.
Satan's will.
It's keeping all those suggestions and all of the identity and who we are alive through the eating process.
Right.
See? See? Yes. Well, there's a lady way back there.
This is so
interesting because I know as a child I was aware of my conscience. I mean, I think children know right from wrong. They know when they've done right and they've done wrong.
They do.
When in my teenage years I became a Christian, a born-again, so to speak, Christian, and have been one for about 20 years, I found I lost touch with my conscience because it wasn't taught. The spirit realm and the soul realm was taught, and there was no relationship between that and conscience.
All intellectual stuff. It was all intellectual, parroting back verse and chapter.
So I found myself kind of in a situation that wasn't necessarily all negative, but it was like a dream state, or there was no correlation. And so therefore I could see why people might be more overweight in the church scene because they might use food as an escape, or they might also use emotion, the charismatic realm, all these various escapes, rather than just listening to.
But if the church
conscience.
leaders would teach what I'm teaching right now, they wouldn't have a church. See, the whole concept, the purpose of government, the business of government is not people, it's government. The business of medicine isn't people, it's medicine. All the powers that be that want to go on being the powers that be, that discovered the power of your need. See, in your fallen state, you have need. You have sick, so you need a doctor. Once the doctor comes into existence, or like once the drug pusher comes into existence because you have a need, you've got a conscience. You're guilty. He rises, he invents something to sniff or to snort to take it away. And the more you do that, the worse you become. You live longer, become wronger, so you need 2 snorts. Aspirins are the same way. So you see, there now, once they've learned that's an easy living, to make a living on your dying. See? Once they find an existence in that, and a power in that, becoming like a god, ministering to your weaknesses and failings, they're reluctant to give it up, and the church is the same way. The church has a history of horrible cruelty and persecutions and murder. And even now, it's wall-to-wall confusion. The people are kept like little children, ministered to, by some weirdo. And I can see those guys don't know what they're talking about. Can't you see that Tammy Baker doesn't know what the hell she's talking about? Can't you see all that phony baloney with loving God? But there are people who can't see through that, because to them religion is the opiate. It's an excitement, it's a hype, it's a lot of words and ideas and identifying with pretty and wealthy and charismatic people. See? And they identify and they get a sense of fantasy self, a fantasy happiness, an illusory sense of well-being by identifying with what seems to be happy there. Because everything that people, the ego is, the only happiness that the ego can ever have is through some external sensory stimuli. You're happy when you're munching, you're happy when you're drinking, you're happy when you don't know you're unhappy. See what I mean? See? And that's not really. And so that it could be excitement, it could be a music, it could be caught up in religiosity, religiousizing, like exercising, jazzercising. You get caught up with that sort of thing, and the sole purpose is to put your conscience to sleep, to give you a sense of relief, of conscience, but then to live longer and to become wronger and to become dependent upon more of those. That's why the churches have grown top-heavy with pomp and ceremony, because you get bored with the old ones, you have to keep adding new ones. See?
So it goes back to the same situation even in the Old Testament where the people wanted a king. They never needed one. If they'd listened to their conscience back then, they would have needed judges.
That's right. Israel was a
unique
unique state because it was a nation of people in whom the God was in the midst of every soul. And we have to have that back again if we are to survive, because governments cannot help us. They cannot save us. They can't even help the poor. The more they help the poor, the more poor we've got to help. And you can't help the sick, because the more you service the sick, well, the more sick they are. You've got more sick people because they live longer and become wronger. And now you're digging deeper into the archives, into your intellect, digging deeper into your soul, dredging up more spirit of knowledge, more cleverness, more cunning. Look at the AIDS thing. This could destroy us. This could take everything we have just to keep those swines alive. Oh, Shouldn't have said that. It could kill us trying to keep them alive, you know what I mean? Yes. Yes, gentlemen back there.
Hi. Question has to do with, I've been in sales for many years, and yet I'm not an outgoing person. Conflict is, it comes up sometimes, is I feel, what am I doing, what I'm doing? And yet if I, in my mind, it's like, this is something I should be doing.
Well, that's not, I don't understand. It's a very confusing
Yeah. Well,
approach. You'll have to do better than that. I can't follow you.
Well, the question is, am I listening, is my feelings, is that my conscience? Or is
I
my
don't
mind?
understand what you're saying. Sorry, I'm very sorry. I don't see the point you're making. It's not clear. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but it just didn't come across very clear. Maybe somebody else knows. There's a lady right over there.
In the prior segment, you were talking about the feeling you get in the solar plexus.
Yes.
And so I'd like to kind of go back to that and ask what you think about this. I've, in the past couple of years, made a lot of progress in dealing with my rage and fear and resentment in meditation and in working out the actual anger that's in it. It seems like it's actually, it just overcomes me in a meditative state, and I've actually just laid down on the floor and beat on the ground.
Yeah.
And get that anger out.
Yes, that's
and it's like it lives in my body.
See, what happens is you've had a lot of suppressed rage.
Yeah, very much, and great deal of fear.
Yes, a lot of suppressed rage.
Yes.
And it's coming out. You've been pushing it down, and it's just coming to the surface, and you're just going to have to allow that to happen for a while.
So that's okay.
Yeah,
I've never heard you.
I won't say it's okay. It's just okay with me. Make it sanction it. I'm saying it needs. It has to. One of the things that I teach people sometimes is, especially wimps. People, any wimps here? Yeah, none of them.
I was.
They have this suppressed rage, and we're changing the subject just a little bit. It's okay. We'll come around back to our conscience in a minute. But they've become somewhat psychotic, tend to be very withdrawn and quiet. You can almost, I can pick out people like that, in this audience. I could just pick out by the look on your face. You have that nice, sweet, benign look. It's like an innocence, and it's blank. There's no character on your face. It looks very innocent and sweet. Everybody would love you. You know what I mean? Just the look. So you don't offend anybody. I won't offend anybody look. And I accept everybody look, And I teach those people to get angry first. Because see, the process of development is you can't, if you suppress a rage, you don't know you have it. How many people in this room have just discovered that they have anger, resentment? It takes you years to discover that you think you're a nice person, but this nice person that you are is not really a nice person at all, but it's a fake person. It's a person who tries to avoid upsetting conditions by being nice to everybody. You don't know how to deal with anger, and you don't want to be upset, so you go ahead before you try to please people before anybody could make a demands on you. So it seems to be your own idea. You try to keep peace, and you're very condescending. And of course, when people take advantage of you, as they always do, because they think you're such a nice person, they give you all kinds of favors. They got all kinds of favors they want you to do for them. Then you end up feeling used, and you start to resent the fact they take advantage of you. And there's that's you, isn't it? Repressed rage. And this rage grows up in it, but you can't say anything but you smile. You look like such a friendly.
The fear.
Huh?
The fear was there. This was in the marriage.
With your husband?
The fear of showing the anger.
Right. So then you do so much for that person because anything if they look at you crossways, it might trigger that anger. And you don't know how, you try to keep yourself from adding more anger to anger because it'll just brim over. It cause you to have a stroke or something, you don't know what's going to happen to you. So you tend to suppress the anger and be nice to everybody and pleasing and condescending to everybody, and you spoil everybody, and they take advantage of it, and you resent it. They haven't done anything mean to you. They just lay too many obligations on you.
And then you ruin your kids.
And you see, and then they start making demands on you because you think they're such a wonderful mother, and you spoil them. They can't do anything for themselves, so then you do it for them, and then they get weaker and they can't help themselves, and they get into trouble, and they're always calling upon mother, and mother feels resentful first. Then comes the compensation for the resentment, the false love, the condescendingness, and it goes round and round. So what I'm trying to say to you is, you've got to say, no, damn it! Right? And you know, and you can use all the choice swear words you like. So,
Well, I've
but why
had
do
to-
I say that? Because you've got to have some kind of expression.
I've had to re-experience in meditation those things that caused the rage and the anger.
Yes.
And see them
But it's
again.
resentment, though.
Yes.
But see,
Well, and what caused the resentment? The whole thing, and get the anger out. I mean,
Right, but yeah.
Re-experiencing it.
but right now, in everyday experiences, you're always meeting people who parent you. For instance, if your parents laid this trip on you when you were young, set you up for this sort of thing, it's always parents. Nearly always parents. Or a parent substitute. See? Then you're going to be dealing with your husband like it was your mother or something, you know what I mean? Or you're going to be dealing with an authority with the same kind of resentment and rage and the same kind of bowing and scraping and condescending and going along with their ideas and their will, not really wanting to, resenting it all along, but smiling while you're doing it like a good little Christian, right?
It was his authority. It
Let's
was
see.
authority that did it to me.
It's authority.
Yeah,
Because
and-
what is the ultimate authority? Is your conscience. I'm glad I came back to that one. That is what, but people in this world, they've been robbed of their conscience. They've been made to doubt what they know is right in their heart. And they're now serving a wrong God. Now, when your mother and father had a mother and father, when they came into the world, and the school system and the church system and everything else, it took them away from their conscience. It made them obedient to the system, the state, the family, authority, the father, authority, mother, authority figure. And you've been cowering down to that resentfully ever since, because there's something, you see, the very fact that they stand there unholy in the place of the holy, standing over a little tiny child. See, before you even, as you came out of the womb, and it wasn't long after that, before they claimed you and set you up in a conditioned reflex before a response that you couldn't deal with. But now that you're old enough and wise enough, I can teach you. I can show you how to come back to transfer your allegiance to your conscience, so that your conscience is your guide. But the first rule of thumb is you must forgive your parents. You must not look at them as authority. They're not your authority. They were originally, like I am for my children, standing there as a tutor, a guide, a regent for a king, as to tutor these little princes, so to know who their real father is, to listen to their conscience. And that is the art of parenting, not being their authority, but preserving their integrity, that which they came into the world with, and teaching them that the world, they must not respond to the pressures of otherwise they become subject to that authority, because all sin makes you subject to authority, right? So you see, we can continue this tomorrow night. Well, we've got 1 minute. Hold the applause. We've got 1 minute just to, those of you listening in Los Angeles or watching in Los Angeles can hear me on radio KIEV every day, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. And if you would like to continue to watch these programs in the evening, it costs megabucks. And right now we're paying half. We've got this week, only this week, after 3 or 4 months, we're up to paying half of the cost. And it's killing me. So if you have a conscience, let it be your guide. Thank you. And in a few minutes, the announcer will give you the information of how to listen to your conscience and overcome the emotion stress of life. Thank you for listening, and join us again.